Now then, looky here, it's a Solax hybrid grid inverter. So effectively it's a solar grid inverter with a charger, a battery charger, and an inverter all in one box. Yeah, so it does power sharing, charges batteries from what would have been exported power anyway, all sorts of things. So it has a connection for a CT clamp, and which of course senses the movement of electricity or power in and out of the grid. So let's just have a look. I'm not going to take it apart, I'm just going to have a look at various features. You know, until a couple of days ago I'd never seen one of these, or never got to the point where you can sort of inspect it to a greater degree. So let's share the info, shall we? So before I wire this up, there's the MC4 connectors for the input, and then next to it, we can't quite see, can we? Is that any better? Yeah, there you go. There's a network connection there, and then the CT connection, and it's interesting, that's an Ethernet, and in the manual it shows that the two outer connections, 1 and 8, are the ones for the CT clamp. Why they couldn't just have two terminals that you could just put it to, I don't know. We've got some communications, then we've got the grid in, and the EPS, emergency power supply. Yeah, and we'll look at that a bit later on. Then we've got this aerial for communications, temperature sensor, BMS, yeah, and that's communications with the BMS, and battery, positive and negative, fairly heavy duty. Just have a look at some of those cables. That's the battery plug, as it were, and then we've got this one here, this cable here, which says BMS, and it's got the standard Ethernet on one end and the other type on the other end. Obviously that plugs into a lithium battery, and then we've got this one here, which is temperature. So that's obviously the temperature sensor, and one assumes it bolts onto the battery pack. Okay, so let's get her wired up and see what the screen looks like. Okay, 1 second, normal. Brilliant. Now, we don't have the CT clamp fitted because whichever engineers took this one out took all the nice bits. They took both the grid plug and the EPS plug. Luckily I've robbed a grid plug off one of my other inverters, so that's not working at the moment, and they also took the CT clamp, which is very annoying. Battery voltage, if a battery was attached, 52 volts, and you actually check the terminals of the battery, and it shows 52 volts. There we go. Right, okay, but we want to, I know what will happen is it'll go, I haven't got a CT clamp, but let's just Let's escape from something. And it also showing there's no battery. CT meter fault. Okay, I was hoping to get through the into the menu, but yeah, we can have a look in the manual instead. So this is an interesting bit. We've got the current clamp there, and the emergency loads are on a separate circuit. So you have to take out, say for instance, lights and fridge and stuff like that, put them on a separate consumer unit, and then there is a contactor there, and the contactor is energized by the mains, so that then this EPS load is connected all the way through here, and the Solax in the evening does power sharing. Yeah, so therefore it'll power up to a certain amount, and then the rest comes from the mains, and that's a settable load. Yeah, but then when that power there, when the grid power drops out, there's no grid, then this contactor moves over to there, so it's a changeover contactor, and just runs the EPS load from the batteries and the Solax. So effectively you have to be careful about the size of that load. Apparently it's up to 2 kilowatt, so it just depends upon how many batteries you've got, etc, etc. And just here, down here, is the CT connection, 1 and 8 on there. Let me just zoom out again. So it's quite a comprehensive manual, and there are all the functions of, or that's the software. See if I can zoom in a bit more. So basically, in through the password, which is on this one it's 0000, and then you've got all these power factor, power limit, you see, yeah, export control, charger, yeah, you name it, which is quite interesting. But I'll just see if I can switch this all off and put it back on, and see if we can get to some of this before it decides it hasn't got a clamp and doesn't want to do anything. Okay, it looks like I can get into things. I think if I go OK, yeah, there we go, status, history, settings, and we go into settings, and then it's OK. There we go, set the date and time, Ethernet. EPS system, let's go in there and have a look. Oh, it says mute and frequency. Okay, so obviously mute means you can switch it off if you wanted to, I'm assuming. Relay control, let's see, trigger power 500 watts, so I'm assuming you could change that down. Yeah, 350, 450, 250, 150, 50, 500 watts, 1500 watts, 2.5. Oh, it's going up in really, yeah, we don't want to do that. Right, I'm not sure why that was set at that. I'd have to read about that. That's a bit odd. I'm going to leave it at 2000 and see what happens. Oh right, okay, so you can go down even more. See that arrow moved over? Okay, and then it moves over again. Interesting. We'll escape from that. We'll escape from that. Right. What's Ethernet? IP method manual. Oh, that's just a way of connecting. Yeah. Escape. Status history. About. I suspect there are 2 codes to get into this. Let's just see what status says. Status on the solar. Nothing, because it's not connected. Except, yeah, because it refused to start because of the CT. Honestly, some of these fitters, you know, they're actually, if you're fitting new gear to something, the gear you're taking out doesn't belong to you. Okay, there's no so I suspect that password doesn't get you as far as you want to. Now, there was, can't remember where it was, but somewhere on YouTube there is a guy actually doing effectively the start of a Solax fitters course, explaining a few things, and you can see him putting the code in, and you can see him pressing the buttons, but of course the code doesn't come up. So you could probably work out from that what the code actually is, unless they've set their own. Yeah, because this isn't going as far as it shows in the manual. In your manual there's a lot more options there under settings password. Yeah, so there's power limit and stuff like that, power factor, but we can't get to that, which is typical. Escape. Okay, there you go. Quite interesting, really. If I'd never come across something like this, it would be like, how does this work? At least I have a vague idea of how it works, and the interrelationship between all the parts. Like, I do believe you can adjust this for a flooded battery or lithium batteries or AGM, etc., etc., and that's fairly important. But the fact that it's all in one for a household, whereas some of the other systems effectively are an inverter and a charger and a battery, and they have a CT clamp, etc., etc., but they're remote from the inverter, so therefore A, they can be put somewhere else in the house, yes, and B, you don't have to interfere with your solar system, you just add it on top. But I suppose if you're fitting a new system from scratch, then this is a way of doing it, although it's all in one unit, and if you get a fault, none of it works. So, you know, at least if you've got it in 2 sections, you get a fault in one section, you know, part of it's working. And, you know, adding batteries to an existing solar grid, if you're then taking the inverter out, and that probably goes to scrap, which is a complete waste of resources. So there you go. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and gained a bit of information, and I will catch up with you soon. I do all these videos to share information mainly, and it would be great if several of my viewers decided that they would like to donate £1 a month through my Patreon. It just helps. You know, you get this sort of stuff, you spend hours messing with it and working it out, etc, etc, and quite honestly, sometimes, or a lot of the time, the results of the video don't get used because I've already got one, like a charger. I don't use it because I've already got 1 or 2 or 3. So a little bit of help would be great. Catch up with you soon. Cheers for now.